WTBQ.
Do you believe the sport we're talking about this afternoon? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Tony Abbatine from WTBQ Radio in Warwick, New York. For years, yours truly has made comments about, let's call it the second greatest sport in the world, soccer, from calling it a communist sport to calling it a sport for sissies. Today, we have one of the best trainers, former Division I player, coach, known in the Northeast as one of the best in the way of training. This is about soccer, and I know some of you are laughing. You're going to tune us off and say, what exactly does Tony Abbatine, the host of Game On, know about soccer? I need to remind the listening audience, right, not to bore you with my soccer accolades. And I have Ken Pollard, our guest, laughing already. Ken, I have in front of me, because I need a witness, because people will not actually believe, who was the captain of the Monroe Woodbury soccer team in 1977?
That would be you, Tony.
Who was the team's leading scorer back in 1977?
Again, that would be you.
Who was 12th in the Orange County in scoring in soccer in 1977?
Again, you.
I just for the record, I want people to know that this isn't just about baseball, that the second greatest sport in the world, soccer, yours truly has a background in it, certainly not at the level as our esteemed guest, Ken Pollard, who joins us in studio, has been involved in soccer for over 40 years and has coached for more than 20. Some of the schools that he's been a coach at, played at Southern Connecticut, was a coach at Duke University, also coached at Southern Connecticut and at Purchase. He's coached at the Division I, II, and III level and has won 4 national championships, 2 as a player and 2 as a coach. He has held a USSF AB license for over 10 years and has a master's degree in exercise science. We are proud to have one of the best in soccer joining us in studio. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tony. Glad to be here.
We're going to go right into it, and I saw some stats that kind of blew me away last night. My sport, baseball. 250 million people enjoy watching Major League Baseball games. Pretty good number. Mm-hmm. The NFL, right? American football, if you will. 400 million, big number. If we were to guess, how many soccer fans are out there in the world? 3 billion people will say that soccer is the greatest game ever. It's a misunderstood sport in this country, Ken. And if you can, why is that? Why is it that the American media still hasn't picked up and has glamorized soccer like you've seen certainly baseball, football, and the other American sport, basketball?
I think it's twofold there. I think that number one, America is a land of success, and basketball, baseball, football leagues are all hugely successful, and by default or not, can call themselves world champions. We can debate that. But soccer, let's say, with its global presence, very difficult for the Americans to compete, for the U.S. to compete. So the level of success that they may be used to in other sports isn't there. Second one is the lack of development as a spectator sport. Also leads to revenue generation and financial opportunities for sponsorship, those kind of things that they can't compete. Soccer can't compete for the primetime slots on ESPN and major channels.
So, for example, the Red Bulls, the professional soccer team in this area, they're not getting 50,000 people to all of their home games?
No.
If you had a guess?
I'd say between 10 and 20.
And again, playing slightly devil's advocate, Ken, is it because the sport is boring? Okay? Is it because some would say, and certainly not me, because I've told you before, I'm a soccer guy, you hear the American critics talk about the boredom factor, it's a game of slowness. There's no contact involved in it. It doesn't have that in-your-face, bang-bang, football, even the baseball component. Is this misinformation, or does soccer have an intrinsic beauty to it that maybe the Americans are just missing?
I think so. I say it's very hard for me to sit down and watch a baseball game. So
shame on you. Well, again, we had John Taminia, the scouting director from the Chicago White Sox, and again, Game On is about educating the parents and making sure that travel coaches, high school coaches, rec coaches have good information to make sure that that the time spent with the children are well. You mentioned before about the 4 pillars of soccer, and I love the fact that the soccer people call it the pillars. In America, we have tools, right? We have a toolbox. You have a pillar. Explain, if you can, the 4 pillars of soccer, and explain a little bit about what 4 of them are and what parents and coaches should be looking for as they start to develop the next David Beckham.
The 4 pillars are number 1, a technical component, number 2, a tactical component, 3, a physical component, and 4, a psychological component. The technical component refers to the skills of the game, the passing, dribbling, shooting, heading, tackling, the execution of those skills. The tactics refers to the decision making. Should I pass? Should I dribble? Should I shoot? Should I support here? Should I support there? The positioning aspects. The physical component refers to meeting the physical demands of the game. At the highest levels of the game, it's a 90-minute game. There's no re-entry as far as substitutions, so you must have endurance. It's an intermittent endurance. You must have speed, you must have strength, you must have agility, you must have balance, you must have power. So it's extremely physically demanding. And then psychologically, the ability to concentrate for that amount of time, to be positive, to be motivated intrinsically. So there's huge aspects there.
So technical, tactical, physical, and psychological. So as parents that are watching their children play, that are evaluating the travel team coaches, those are the 4 components that you hope is a part of whatever travel or rec or academy program they're in. Ken, if you could, the whole trainer-coach separation, kudos to the soccer world for getting that right. We talked off air about in America, because everyone has played the greatest game ever, baseball, you don't have that trainer-coach separation. You have the coach, the well-intended dad, teaching what he knows. The soccer, through the various national and federal associations, they get it. They understand that the trainer is different from the coach. Elaborate on, to me, the greatest advantage of playing amateur soccer and the relationship of the trainer, which many times is not the coach, come that Saturday afternoon.
I think there's a benefit there to having somebody with a level of expertise. But as we talked about pre-show, I think it's important that the game becomes an evaluation tool of how training, what the level of training was or what the success of the training was. So you observe the sequence is, you observe the game, you evaluate, then train, and then observe again in the game. So as long as the trainer's getting the correct feedback or seeing in the games for themselves, then that paradigm can work.
Walk us through the whole licensing process. I mean, certainly you at the top of the pyramid with your resume and having coached and played at almost every level. Mentioned before a AB license. Mm-hmm. I'm a father. I'm a high school teacher. I want to climb the ladder and one day be the next Ken Pollard. Mm-hmm. Where do I start, and what are the different level criterias?
There's a number of governing bodies or licensing bodies. One in this country is the National Soccer Coaches Association of America. Another one is the United States Soccer Federation that I've gone through. They have licenses from E-level, E, D, C, B, A. And each level gets progressively more detailed, relating to higher levels of player.
How long would it take, Ken, and certainly you've been coaching for over 20 years, how long would it take the typical coach to acquire an A license?
It's usually a 7 to 10 day course, but the recommendations are that you soak in the information, experiment with it after you. It's not just a question of taking the course and now you're qualified. There's a lot of studying, and a lot of licenses in the rest of the world require ongoing work, kind of like other certifications. I know for some wellness coaching or life coaching kind of areas, they will have you take a course and then you go out and report back on with logs and those kind of things.
Does it surprise you a bit, Ken, that baseball has none of that? We mentioned before, America's game, we'll call it baseball. If you have a clipboard and if you're not a felony conviction recently, you get to coach baseball.
That is surprising. I am very surprised that there's no national federation for that. And say there's one other license that people who might be listening to the show need to be aware of. The one that's more appropriate for younger ages is a National Youth Soccer License that is specific for the younger player.
Let's talk about travel teams. Mm-hmm. Big business, so many of them. Each year we see more travel soccer teams, whether it's at the rec level, the travel level. Walk us through the hierarchy, starting from kinder kickers, and pardon my lack of terminology, all the way up to premier. Would that be the highest level? As a parent, when do you know it's time for your son or daughter to go and play at the next travel level for soccer?
I would say it's the same way you would know with anything else, that and it's not an exact science, but if something is becoming easy, then you need to be challenged again. It's about finding ability appropriate challenges, and whether that's academics or whether that's sport. If a child is reading something but losing interest because they're bored, then it's not appropriate. You need to find another level. If that challenge is now becoming causing anxiety, it's too stressful, then they need to come down a little bit. There's called a concept of flow, that you're finding these ability appropriate challenges that again they're challenging enough that they're not causing boredom, but they're not too challenging that cause the anxiety.
And the importance of winning at the 11, 12-year-old level, Ken. I mean, we need to make sure that the 10U and 12U coaches, it's all about winning. It's all about college scholarships. It's all about getting in front of those colleges at the age of 10. True or false?
Sadly.
Ken, please say false, otherwise you're off the show.
No, we know the research tells us that kids play sports for 4 reasons. They play, number 1, to have fun. They play, number 2, to learn new skills. Number 3, to belong to a group. And 4, to be competitive. Now, competitive means being competitive. You can't win all the time. You must be able to handle losing, have things not go your way. But I say it's important to be competitive. We want athletes to be competitive. We want children to be competitive. But you have to be able to be humble when you win, and you have to be able to have resilience and to be able to come back if you lose.
The college scholarship, and I certainly said that tongue-in-cheek with our poor little 10 and 11-year-olds who, unfortunately, that discussion and that demand sometimes is put upon them with parents. Walk us through the process. You've got a 14-year-old son or daughter. They have an interest. They love the sport. They've achieved a level of success. How does a parent, how does a travel coach again, with the best of intention, how do they get that player out in front of some colleges so at an early age, and no different than baseball, it's not about your senior year, that the better programs at the Division I and II soccer level, they're right now looking at 9th and 10th graders, that they want to see who the good athletes are, maybe chart their development, and but by the time they're a junior, start talking to mom or dad about a possible scholarship. How can a parent position their sons or daughters for that to happen, and what are some of the dangers in doing it too early?
Yeah. I would say, number one, please don't put that pressure on your child to have them compete, or to compete to the highest level that they can, to want to play at the highest level they can. That's a great goal and something to help your child with. To put the pressure on them to achieve a scholarship or a certain level of status, that's I wouldn't subject my own children to that. I would highly not recommend it to anyone to do to their own child. What you can do is keep giving them ability-appropriate challenges. Each time they become bored or master that challenge, try to look for a new and better challenge for them. We have different levels of play that players can develop through. When you are looking at colleges, please select your colleges first based on academic program, academic level, geographical area, size of the school, financial considerations, and look at soccer last. I say pick your top 10 schools based on those criteria first.
We are talking soccer today on Game On, the second greatest sport in the universe, with Master Coach Ken Pollard. Hopefully the 3 billion soccer fans in the world are in tune listening to Ken Pollard and Tony Abbatine talking soccer. And Ken, we mentioned the college selection process, what exactly college coaches are looking for with that hopefully above average skilled high school soccer player. Can you elaborate, and what advice can you give? What are the college coaches looking for?
Basically, every coach is looking for, is there an intrinsic motivation there? Does the player have a passion for the game? Number one. Two, do they have a cooperative attitude? Can they have an individual drive, but sacrifice that for a collective vision? And then you're looking at physical proficiency. Do they have the speed, strength, endurance to compete at the level, whether it's Division I, II, or III? And then, do you have the tactical and technical abilities to deal with that speed of play?
You mentioned speed of play, and we've had in the past that some of our turn and burn speed classes at Frozen Ropes, soccer players, and you made a great point. Soccer is a game of 2-second sprints. Mm-hmm. It is not like baseball, 90 feet of straight, or what we call linear speed. How would you improve, and this is something that coaches ask us all the time, whether it's in our turn and burn classes or even the Rockfoot classes, can you improve that 2-second sprint speed of a soccer player? When is it done, and what techniques would you use to hopefully improve that speed?
Well, I think it can be improved. There is a genetic ceiling, but you can maximize that genetic component. Speed must, when you're training speed, it must be done as fast as possible, and it must be done in a fresh state. Really, you're training the central nervous system, and you're training the signals from the brain to the muscles to activate. For soccer, you're looking at physical speed. You're looking at multi-directional. You're looking at technical speed, your ability to execute with and without the ball. And you're looking at tactical speed, of the ability to make decisions quickly, and then transfer that into physical work. It's
strength training.
Mm-hmm.
The football players certainly lift differently than the baseball players. Our softball players, the females, certainly have a different strength training objective. We've had soccer coaches tell us that there is no strength training component in soccer. I have always respectfully disagreed. Being physically fit at times when we can argue whether soccer is a contact sport or not, but certainly there are some times in the, is it called a scrum? Right?
That's wrong sport.
Wrong sport. That's rugby. At times when you've got to get in and either try to score or maneuver your way around a defender, mm-hmm. some upper body strength certainly would be helpful.
Absolutely. Just the common term for it these days is core strength, the ability to support your body weight on one leg, to ability to decelerate and accelerate again in different directions. You need strength to be able to do that. Just for this, where we're talking about speed, transitioning from speed into this segment, you must have the appropriate core strength to be able to, under pressure, at speed, accelerate, decelerate, change direction, and accelerate again. If you don't have strength, you're not going to be able to do that. Would
you ever recommend bench pressing or any of the Olympic lifts that you see, Ken?
I think there might be a time and a place for some players and athletes if there was there may be a time and place for that. I wouldn't recommend it. I think there's a lot of good stuff out there on the fitness side of things about new stuff of how the body works, functions as a chain. The best part of it that I see for soccer players to understand and develop on is, talking about this chain, the ankle is designed for mobility. The knee is designed for stability. The hip is designed for mobility. And the trunk and the core is designed for stability. If you lose stability at the ankle, if you lose mobility at the ankle, then it impacts stability at the knee. If you lose stability at the core, it can impact mobility at the hip. So everything where we're, as soccer players, accelerating, decelerating, changing direction, if the chain isn't working correctly, if there are weaknesses where there needs to be stability and strength, if there is a lack of mobility where there needs to be mobility, if there is an asymmetry from a repetitive movement of favoring one leg versus the other, that can lead to injury with stressful, repetitive situations.
How would the typical parent identify and know that those techniques are being taught by that trainer or by that coach? Other than hiring you to be the trainer, you're talking about some technical things, and your background certainly in exercise physiology allows you to do that. We've witnessed that at our location, soccer coaches that are still statically stretching, that still think that jumping jacks are the only way in which you're going to get players ready, and actually think that running a half a mile uphill is going to improve the strength level of, the speed level of some of their players. This is the disconnect, and what both of us have agreed, the missing link for so many of these players is the strength and conditioning component to it, yet they're not getting it at the youth level. They're not even getting it sometimes at the travel level. What can a parent do about that?
I say just educate yourself the best you can and fight for your child just like you would in any other area. You do your research as far as what are the best schools in the area, and you understand you want to expose your child to the best. So do your homework. If you're not an expert or you don't know an expert, then the internet, there's resources out there. But again, you've got to be careful and make sure you do your research.
We're talking football today on Game On, the blueprint for success. What exactly your young soccer player can and should be doing to give him or herself a chance to play at the next level. Can you say American soccer? We're back with Ken Pollard talking soccer and all of the components at the amateur level. We need to have a shout out to our friends at ShopRite, particularly Melanie Durkin, who will be with us next week. Melanie is our dietitian nutritionist, Ken, and what we're finding out from an energy fatigue factor, understanding energy drinks and supplements and weight gain and weight loss, to have, as you mentioned before, get good information. There's no excuse now in the age of the internet and in all the technology that's been brought into sports why a parent, why a travel parent coach can't go out and get good information. And whether it's understanding that Gatorade and these sugar energy drinks are not what your children should be drinking casually before a game or when they're not working up a significant amount of sweat. Thanks to our friends at ShopRite, Melanie will be with us next week in studio to talk about why some of our players, and I'm sure you see it at the soccer level, are dying by the fourth quarter. And there's many components to that, but certainly the nutritional component and just overall energy level is crucial. Let's get back to what we're going to call the blueprint. You're going to put together the blueprint for all the parents that are listening on, let's give you a 10-year-old, for example. That 10-year-old is motivated. You mentioned before they're enjoying it. There's a fun factor. There's a sense of belonging. They're acquiring good social skills. They're learning to compete, right? They're learning to accept losing and learn from it. Yet at the same time, they're gracious winners, as we tell our travel coaches. Let's talk about the book Outliers. I know you and I talked about that before, a tremendous insight on what it actually takes to be the so-called overnight success, knowing that to be an overnight success starts probably a decade before the big night.
Absolutely. You say the book, I believe it's written by Malcolm Gladwell, focuses on a number of areas of success or areas that go into success. And I'm sorry, the name of the gentleman from Florida State, and I apologize to him for not being able to say his name correctly, but has put the time into studying and coming up with the number that approximately 10,000 hours are required to create excellence.
Well, let me just stop you for a second there, Ken. How would one possibly start computing? Why isn't it 11,000?
I have no idea. I haven't read his research.
Yeah, so I've read the book years before, and when I saw that 10,000, if you had to compute how many days that would be, and you and I are probably not mathematical geniuses to figure that out. Maybe someone can help us with, if you were to take 10,000 hours, 24 hours in a day, assuming that this young phenom would work 24 hours a day, just how many days that would be. It's a phenomenal number that when people hear that, you wonder why there's not all these superstars that are out. But for this discussion, let's use 10,000. Maybe it's 9, maybe it's 12. What then? Knowing that that's the amount of hours that are being put in, what's the next part of this blueprint?
Well, number one is if you're just training 2 days a week and playing a game on the weekend, it's not going to happen. It's not enough. If you are training every day or playing a game every day, it's probably going to be too much. So it's finding a balance between what you're working on, whether it's the psychological component, whether it's the technical component, whether it's the tactical component. And as saying, this is the research shows it to be whether you're a musician, whether it's a violinist, whether it's a computer wizard, or whether it's an athlete. It's the 10,000 hours is what's required. So again, bringing it back to athletes, the question is, and I'm a parent, I have a 5, 7, and 8-year-old, and finding that balance between letting them explore what they want to explore and letting them try everything versus helping them and assisting them to make a selection of the sport that they're best suited to.
I have to ask you a question with your 5, 7, and 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
And I hope I get the right answer. Are they playing baseball?
No.
I'm going to guess. They play soccer, Ken?
Only my son. My daughter is doing gymnastics. My 5-year-old is fighting hard to do ballet.
But you're not going to let him.
No, we're not letting him yet. But my son is playing soccer, and it's funny because of my knowledge of structured sports and a fear of it that I share with my wife. We signed our son up for football first. We didn't want him to go into soccer, have a negative experience, burn out too early, but wanted him to be active. He needs to be around boys. So we signed him up for football. So he's standing in this long line waiting for his turn, and he's getting bored, and he's acting up. And the coach sends him, gets mad at him, yells at him, and sends him on a run to the far end of the field and come back. And he stands in the line and waits again and for his turn. And I'm saying to myself, okay, he's got to be completely miserable. And he comes off the field. I said, how was it, buddy? He goes, great, Dad. Had a great time.
Welcome to American amateur sports. Wait in line, get yelled at, and go run. and he enjoyed it. Is he still playing football or no?
No, but that's a testament to the resilience of the kids and what they're able to endure. But not what we were looking for as parents. But now we've put him into soccer. He's having fun. He's enjoying it. And another great experience I can share, if it's all right, if we have time for it, trying to coach him, help him, playing, passing with him, giving him some advice around his technical technique, and he's getting frustrated with me. Dad, stop picking on me. Leave me alone. Don't just let me play. So, okay. So what I did was over-exaggerate the technique that I wanted him to have. So I just emphasized it. Every time the ball came to me, I emphasized sending it back to him in a way that I wanted him to do it. Within 2 minutes, he was doing exactly what I wanted him to do, but he didn't want to hear it from an audible standpoint.
And it's interesting, Ken, we've talked about the master teacher, and certainly you fit in that category, and the equal challenge of parent coaching their son or daughter, whether it's soccer, baseball, it's irrelevant. It's the best and worst of times, as I call it, and knowing when to stop, and as you eloquently presented, knowing how to just simply change what you're doing, knowing that at some point the auditory, I call it the monologue diarrhea, that coaches at times will go through, thinking that because I'm saying it, this is learning. Learning is not about what the person who's teaching or talking is perceiving. Is that acceptance? Are they getting it? And certainly in soccer and all of the sports, the feel, the visual demonstration skills that all good teachers have, that by far is the most effective way to make progress. And what we see, and we see it with soccer and we see it with all the sports, an incredible amount of noise that in the amateur coaching level is equated with learning. A little different in other parts of the country, other parts of the world, that we talked about off air. What's going on in other countries where soccer dominates, where you're seeing some of those countries at the highest level? What are they doing differently with youth soccer in, say, Holland or Italy or other places that you're familiar with?
In the majority of the world, it's a less structured environment. And to go back to what you were saying there about the auditory and the expert approach. So we know, the research is there through education, that a non-expert, a facilitative, a guided discovery, a self-discovery approach is much more beneficial. It's much more successful. It's much healthier. So I would encourage, and the coaching licenses in the U.S. do a good job of recommending that is the approach to take. Later on, we can talk about how that might be done and some issues that to help parent coaches with that. But to go to your question of other countries, I would throw it out. I say, where are the better baseball players, better basketball players coming from in this country, are they coming from areas where they've been coached, or are they coming from areas where they've been allowed to play and be kids? And in Amsterdam, say we talked about Holland. Holland is a small country in Europe, but has an incredible rate of producing highly talented and successful players on the international stage. At the younger levels, they have no teams. They play 4 versus 4 on small-sided fields, and kids play with different players against different players on every weekend or every time they go to play. It's not a structured team. They just play 4 versus 4. The focus is on skill development and social development. You
mentioned where the great baseball players are coming from, and can we say the Dominican Republic? Can we say Puerto Rico? Can we say all of the other continents other than the United States? Look at major league teams, Jose Reyes, say Pedro Martinez. These are players that at a very early age, and it's exactly what you're describing with the young soccer players from Amsterdam, it's simply go and play. They're learning by watching. Mm-hmm. They're learning by making mistakes. They're learning by being, I call it, by being free. Mm-hmm. You look at the typical Little League or what happens in the States, we have T-ball, we have structure. Put your hands here, put your feet here, elbow position needs to be here. It's no different, Ken, than what I see with the youth soccer. They have robotized, if you will. I don't know if that's a word that I made up, but we're making these little robots out of all these young athletes instead of letting children go play. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It's very easy for me to go to a soccer field and look at a group of players and to pick out which players know what the real thing looks like, and then which players have just been coached. And to say it's important in the developmental of young players for them to know what the real thing looks like, not just dad kicking the ball to them or coach kicking the ball to them, that they see the highest level of the game so they can see what it looks like and try to replicate it in a free environment. And it's saying for the parents out there who are coaching teams, you don't have to be an expert. I've watched over the years many youth coaches make the mistake. I've watched my daughter go through it as her coach last year. For an hour session, 40 minutes of it is spent with the coach talking. It doesn't work. Players don't learn that way. It's not fun for the kids. And you don't need to be an expert. If you're working on dribbling, all you need is a small-sided game, 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, 4 versus 4, with the objective to dribble over a line to score. That's it. That's all you need. If you're working on passing, same setup, just pass. Either you score by passing to a teammate, you get a point for that, or you pass it through a number of small goals. If you're working on receiving the ball, again, either one of those options will work. So it doesn't need to be in lines. It doesn't, and you don't need to be in there. They can figure it out from the activity, and their success in the activity will coach them. They will coach themselves based on whether this works or whether it doesn't work.
Ken, I know in baseball and some of the other traditional American sports, the whole college selection process, we talked about not talking about scholarships in colleges to 10, 11, 12-year-olds. It gets to the point where that undue pressure many times will undermine the fun factor, and at the end of the day, you've got a 14-year-old that just doesn't want to play the sport anymore because they've been hearing mom and dad and the travel coaches talk about the need to have Florida State, UNC, Maryland, all the soccer powerhouses. You need to go play. At some point, though, right, assuming that they put in their 10,000 hours and doing it in this 4-tier system that you shared with us, the 4 pillars of great soccer players, what can a parent do in order to at least give that above-average player the opportunity? Many times in all of the American sports, whether it's dollar amounts or you're in the wrong tournament, you're not being seen at the right time. What can that, and let's really talk about 9th and 10th graders, because that's when the whole process starts. as a parent, not even as a parent coach, what can they do to give their son or daughter an opportunity, let's just say, to play at the Division I level? Parentheses, maybe get some scholarship money, but that should be secondary.
Absolutely. But it's all about finding an ability appropriate level to play at. So,
but Ken, how do they know that? This is the problem, that when you talk to some soccer parents, my son is a Division I player. I truly think that my Johnny or my Bridget can play at the University of Connecticut. When does a sense of reality step in, and who can educate the parents on how accurate their evaluation is of their own son or daughter, knowing that as parents, we are the worst, by far the worst evaluators of our own children?
Absolutely. I'd say the reality check would be to go and watch a game. To go, whatever school you are considering or you would like to play at, go see what that level is. And so many people think that they can play or their child can play at a certain level, but they have no idea what it takes to be at that level. So I would say go visit the school, go see a game, go chat with the coach, go chat with some of the players, see what the demands of the program are, see what the coach is specifically looking for, and then see, if there are services out there as far as recruiting services and people who provide counseling around that, the selection process. But I'd say to be proactive in it and really go visit the school, base your selection criteria based on what we talked about earlier. Go visit the schools that you're looking at, meet with the coach, see the level of play, see what he's looking for, and then go from there.
We're going to put Ken on the spot, and he's going to make fun of and try to convince our audience why baseball is the second sport in the world.
WTBQ.
We're back talking soccer today. Tony Abbatine being joined by Ken Pollard. Ken, we've been back and forth with I think we've touched on every component of developing soccer, the realities of it, the technical skills and whatnot. So I can understand, and for our listening audience, break down the different age groups when you're looking at the different objectives for training purposes. Do the 5-year-olds do the same things as the 9-year-olds? Give us what you would say would be the traditional breakdowns in a good soccer program.
I say basically when you're talking under 6 through under 9, you're just looking at them having an enjoyable experience with the game, to let them develop their own passion, to develop a comfort level with the ball. When we get to 9 through 12, that's where we're really looking to fine-tune the agility, motor skills, technical skills. That's where there's most window for development there. Then when you get to the 13, 14, we're looking to move into tactical application of the technique and more competitive application of the technique, but you're still hitting puberty there, where there's big issues between what somebody may be technical and tactically capable of versus what they're physically capable of. And you've got to be very, very careful. And as a parent, you've got to check yourself there. Once they get through puberty, then 15 on, then we can really push the competitive side of things and see, what level they're capable of playing at. But it's like fun at the younger ages, technical development after that, and then tactical into that transitional phase between 13 and 14.
I wrote an article maybe 3 years ago, Ken, for Collegiate Baseball, sorry to say, and I called soccer a communist sport. I called it the sport that if you can't play the real sport of baseball, run onto the field, kick a ball around, and be emotionally safe. And I like to define emotionally safe, and this isn't about one sport being better than another. This is about participation, using sports as a life skill, and whether it's baseball, soccer, and I hate to say it even for your son who might like ballet, you might have to get used to the fact that your son wants to do ballet for the next years to teach him good coping skills and balance skills. But the one thing that, and I think the reason why it's so popular with some of the younger children and even some of the parents, you put your 7 or 8-year-old on a soccer field. At no time does he or she stand there by him or herself and strike out. At no time do you have everyone that's watching the game watch your son or daughter become traumatized when that ball rolls through her legs in the middle of a game. Because of the moving parts and the fact that you might miss a pass, but the game doesn't stop, and if you miss the pass, you probably have a teammate in the general vicinity that'll kind of continue play. Mm-hmm. And this is just my opinion. Because it's so emotionally safe and secure, you have a lot of parents that, I don't want my kid playing baseball because God forbid he or she strikes out or misses a ball. Everyone's going to be looking at them because baseball and softball are more of an individual sport. Is that accurate, or am I just so blinded, on baseball? No,
I think you're absolutely right. But again, that's the reality of competitive sports. And nobody said competitive sports at the highest level is healthy either, physically or psychologically. But I shared with a group of under 16s that I'm working with this weekend. There's a great interaction between Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan. Best coach, one of the best coaches ever, one of the best players ever. Jackson says to Jordan, "There's no I in team." And Jordan's response is, "Yeah, but there is in win." Right? So there's a collective commitment, but an individual responsibility. And whether that's taking a shot at the buzzer, or whether that's finishing a one-on-one opportunity in soccer, or whether it's being the last defender and saving a goal, there's an individual responsibility there, and you must be physically and psychologically able to handle that. But again, at appropriate levels. And that's why it's important at those younger ages where the coping skills are not there to be able to deal with that kind of pressure, that we need to create. And as the adults responsible, we need to create an environment that is conducive to the right development there.
And that's why soccer continues to be the most popular sport to play. Tremendous cardio, a sense of belonging. You don't need all the expensive equipment. You don't need the $400 bat, the gloves and whatnot. You can play it really anywhere. The limitations of basketball and certainly football and baseball, you need the structured field or diamond, if you will, to do that. I think as soccer continues to be the most popular sport in the world, you can play it anywhere. And as you described in Holland, you can play with 3 or 4 people. It doesn't take an awful lot to be able to do that, to just simply practicing the individual skills and just learning the flow of the game. Ken, I have to thank you. I know some of our audience, we're happy to have you as we continue to build our programming at the Rock Sports Park, and we have to thank Tom Fromback, our new general manager, for introducing you to our campus as our new soccer consultant, right? As you come on board and you'll be spending time with some of the parents and players and coaches in the Hudson Valley area that want to get it, that understand that just simply teaching soccer is not about kicking. There's so many other things that you can do. We say this to all the guests that are here. The most influential person on a young player's skill development and lifestyle skills will be the parent. And as much as we can bring the trainer in, bring the coach in and whatnot, the mom or dad spending time in the backyard and without being an expert, and you mentioned that before, that influence, those hours, that 10,000 number that you brought up, that's more of a function of parental involvement and allowing them to enjoy themselves. We want to thank you, Ken, and we'll certainly have you back talking about the greatest sport ever, soccer. Thank you, Ken.
My pleasure, Tony. Thank you very much.